long emails when now I don't want to write. I just give prompts that what is the context I want to have, what is the tone I need to do. So that little bit of thought process has got, right?
Intelligence.
Yeah.
So as a human, at least to the state that we have AI right now, we should believe that whatever I am getting is going to be artificial, going to be made up, like we say technical term as hallucinations. One is these tools are built in a way that a human feels better about their answers. It will never say that you are wrong. So that is the reason the people are getting more comfortable to it.
Main thing which is consumed by these models, and that is what makes them do your stuff. You get trained in that, and then it gets being expert in that area, and then does the stuff. That is the data. I start with a very fundamental question: do you still think good and trustable data is still the foundation of the AI models?
I think one line answer is yes.
Hello everyone, welcome to the DataPedia Show. This is your host Yogesh, and we have a very interesting guest today, and my ex-colleague from Microsoft, Nitin Agrawal. Welcome to the show, Nitin.
Thanks, Yogesh. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and there are a lot of interesting items to discuss today. And I assure our viewers that please stay until the end, and you have a lot of lot of things to look into, discuss, and think about. Once you listen to this podcast, and at the end of it, you have a lot of things to take away. Anyway, we before we start, I would love our viewers to know a little bit about you, Nitin. So, would you quickly introduce yourself so that the viewers would know what you do, what are your experience, and currently what are the interesting stuff that you are doing?
Sure. Yes. So I am a principal data scientist right now working with Atlassian. In my whole career of around 14 and a half years, I have been to different roles around the data. So I started my journey from data engineering role and then moved towards machine learning on my own, building a lot of projects. And then during this wave of generative AI, I was in Microsoft and then I got a chance to work on this technology, and we have built a internal tool that was for sales teams within Microsoft, and that is more like a co-pilot that we have built out, and that's where my journey of generative AI started. And then during the journey, I think every day we are seeing a lot of new stuff, and that's what I keep on trying, learning new things. And during the journey, I got a very big interest into evaluation of these generative AI systems. So this is being my journey across, and these are my interests as of now. But let's see how it goes in the future now.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to work in the latest stacks, and also AI is the hot cake now, right? But apart from the superficial things that everyone is, we want to debunk what actually is behind, what are the workings, what are the challenges, what are the important things we should take care about, right, when developing an AI ecosystem. All those things we'll be discussing today. I'll just jump right in, right? Uh, one of the few important topics that we always hear nowadays is how we are embracing AI in everyday life, right? Yes, there are a lot of tools which we are using in day to day for every kind of job role. Maybe a product manager is using differently.
Right.
Maybe a artist is different using differently. Maybe not only tech people, but the non-tech people are also using differently. Graphic designer may be using differently. So how, what do you think the practical adoption and the real world uses, right, in AI in everyday life? How important it is, and what are the key areas do you think are important for adoption?
Yeah, sure. I think there are multiple layers to this question and answer. So maybe I'll try to start from my personal usage and then we go into the different professions, right? So for me, obviously, it's a very go-to tool. Previously, it was Google. We used to Google everything, right? Now we ask all these AI tools like for our everyday questions. Now these everyday questions could be on different levels. This is how I define my usage. One would be, let's say, low risk usage where we just correcting our grammars, revamping our sentences, or maybe rewriting our resume with some more better English, or those kind of framing of the sentences, formatting, and those kind of. So those are very low risk items where we, even if it goes wrong, we are okay to handle that, right? Then it goes to a little bit more medium level. I feel is like summarizing your whole text out of that. For example, I need to read the whole research paper before. Now, instead of reading the whole paper, I just give it to a tool and say, okay, can you summarize, give me the high level points, maybe create a flow for me to understand the whole concept. So I start with that. So that is again, it can go in some concept wrong. So it is medium kind of a risk that I've given it to it. So I be very cautious on reading those summaries, but also try to read the paper as well. But I think if you have to read, let's say 10 papers, and it becomes a good tool to start with, right? So this I
Mm.
target as more like a medium risk. Then you have a high risk item. For example, you want to do strategize something, you want to take your life decisions. So I would still say don't take life decisions just based on ChatGPT or any of this tool. But you can get some guidance, you can get some different perspective. So for example, I have a mutual fund portfolio. I ingest my mutual funds to ChatGPT and say, can you create a portfolio for me, right?
Yeah,
It
right.
gives you a lot of suggestions. So what I take from those suggestions is, okay, what are different ideas that this particular tool is giving me? Can I explore those mutual funds and take my own decision? I don't blindly buy those as per the suggestion. So this is how I generally use ChatGPT, being very cautious about the the risk levels. Now, looking at the different professions, like you said, every profession is using it very differently, right?
Correct.
I have seen people around me from product management, they are using it very differently. But if you go a little bit high level, what I felt is the overlap of the roles have changed a little bit more. So being a data scientist, I am coding almost every day on Python, SQL, no matter what. But sometimes we need to create, let's say, a prototype or a MVP just to showcase our whole product, not the model output, right?
Right.
So what we do, we generate a simple UI from the code itself and do it. Where
Mm.
we used to use help of a UI engineer or a
Mm.
front end engineer onto that. So those kind of things I am doing it in my daily day to day job as well. Like I said, low risk items also I'm doing. Let's say if I have written a Python code, it is not properly structured, so I just give it to AI to make it more structured. So maybe I save 10 minutes there, export more
Right.
data to the other without putting a lot of time to it, right? So
Right. Right. Right.
I feel this is a very good use of day to day with low risk, and it
Mhm.
becomes easy for others also to read about this.
Yes. In that topic, one of the things I usually do is, let's say, when we try to answer to a lot of RFPs, right, and provide solutions. Usually, the RFPs which get released by the the companies are pages, 200 pages, and we get lost in the scope of work,
Yeah.
right? So, like you said, we upload it to any kind of tool like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. But like you said, there should be some guardrails, right? You should not go ahead blindly believing what the ChatGPT or the tool is throwing across to you. So in order to make sure that it is contextualized, right? So that is very important. I usually do is I provide these documents to have this context and to relate to by the tool as much as I can, so that the output that the GPT provides is as much as truthful and reliable as somebody who actually read the document and and created output. So very well said. I think for low risk, it's okay. Writing an email, correcting an email is fine. But for high risk, should be always cognizant of the fact that uh, you know it's it's when we say it's AI, it's not intelligent. It looks intelligent. So that thing we have to make sure that we acknowledge that and we keep that in mind and work through. One of the questions always we also have is when we start relying on this AI tools so much, right? Do you think we are going to a state where we're over relying on them? And like, for example, I tell a very simple thing, right? Now I used to write long emails, right? Emails. Now I don't want to write that. I just give prompts that context I want to have, what is the tone I need to do. So that little bit of thought process is gone, right? Yes, it helps me save time, but this is my thought process that it has also reduced my that age in writing a good email. over the time, I'm saying, not in a one day thing, but over time when I start every time using only GPT. So what do you think? Where is the balance? Or is there no balance?
So I can start from the sentence that you said, like it's eventually artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
So as a human, at least to the state that we have AI right now, we should believe that whatever I am getting is could be artificial, could be made up, like we say technical term as hallucinations.
correct.
But whenever I am talking to somebody who's not technical, I say it can made up things, and it may have something which is not even exist, and then you are believing it. And I believe that is what I'm seeing around me, using it more than they should use, more than the use cases it could be used, right? I'm
Hmm.
not saying it is not useful, but I'm trying to say that we should be very mindful of using it. It could be like multiple dimensions to it. I give you.
Correct.
One is these tools are built in a way that a human feels better about their answers. It will never say that you are wrong or you are foolish or something like that. It will always say, okay, this is where you are correct. It is very well, what we say, trained in the back end for human handling, right? That is one thing. So that is the reason the people are getting more comfortable to it. Right, so this is
Hmm.
one of my ongoing research. Maybe you'll see a paper in some time, which is basically talking about the kind of comfort that we have to use these tools. People are overly using it, right?
Hmm.
So I give you one example. Even if we are able to think that okay, these are the right areas to talk about. For example, if I want to take my personal decision on, let's say, buying out a new item, so it would be a decision of a family to decide on. Let's say I wanted to buy a new car, right?
Correct.
So this tool could be used as a research on comparing multiple cars. That is a good use case. But if you are asking this, should I buy a car or not, right? And then you are just taking these kind of decision from this. What is happening is it is basically the psychology of the human is affected by this. That's what I'm trying to say, and that is what my one of my research area that I'm working on as my hobby. So the point around this is that people are using it and then they're relying on these answers,
Hmm.
right? And so ideally we should be driving AI outputs. Now AI is driving a lot of decisions and a lot of outputs that we are making, right?
Right.
So I think that's what I'm thinking, to make a balance. Whenever you get output from this, evaluate this as a human first and then decide. So for example, you have a family member, let's say, who is younger to you and gives you, let's say, five decisions or five suggestions. Would you take all the five suggestions all the time?
Hmm.
Based on your maturity, your experiences, and then say,
Correct.
this five, this looks correct to me. Let me try this instead of just following all the five. So we should treat these tools as of now like that. That's the first thing. So drive your output on your own instead of driving yourself based on this output. Again, use this as to automate or maybe faster your research, data capturing abilities. For example, previously we need to take a lot of Google to get to some answer. What happens
Right.
next is you just give a question, give you the answer plus the research on just one output. So that is a good part. Now following that and implementing that should be a human angle.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you on that one, and I think that everyone who is using the AI tools should be knowing, like, what the AI tool is capable of, and what is the use case, like you said,
Yeah.
and where exactly do you draw the line, and then you start working on it, right? But yeah, great conversation. But yeah, we shifting gears now, going to the meaty part of our discussions, like the data area where we this is coming to now the real tech stuff. Everyone talks about AI. I listen to a lot of podcasts regarding AI. Yes, we talk about AI models, and then AI models, computing power, getting reviews, some number of tokens, all those things. We tend to hear a lot of things. What the AI agent is able to do, right? Now, I hardly hear people discussing about the main thing which is consumed by these models, and that is what makes them do your stuff, right? Meaning you get trained in that, and then you get expert in that area, and then does the stuff. That is the data,
Right.
right? How the model is trained. So now I start with a very fundamental question, right? Do you still think good and trustable data is still the foundation of the AI models?
I think one line answer is yes, 100%. But we need to understand the layout that has changed in last few years. So I'll go step by step again in my
Sure.
answer. So previously, maybe I'm just talking about before LLMs that we had, we still were using a lot of prediction model, even language models, and we were using our raw data in terms of structured data and unstructured data as well, right? So there obviously the data is very important across, but there we were talking about training a lot of models, right? So while training the models, every kind of data which should be very cleaned, very much in line with what is best for the model should be definitely used. So that has not changed. Even
Mhm.
whenever we are training our LLMs, we try to train on a very clean or quality data. But in LLMs, what we have is we have multiple layers over the training as well, which
Mhm.
can mask these bad data quality as
Okay.
well, right? For example, I have trained on a contrary data on my LLM, then you have a layer of human feedback which can
Correct.
correct this. So that's the reason these LLMs are handling better with the bad data as well.
Mm.
But data is still important. I can give you how it is important. So for example, the training layer we have handled a lot of data, but how we are using these models in our day-to-day life or even in enterprises, right? We ask questions and it gives us answer, right?
Mm.
But we are mostly using a RAG kind of system. So I give you a RAG means basically you are giving the context of your local system or your local domain or the system with the LLM, with the question to get your answers, right? Now this context has to be what I say. It may not be correct in terms of the granularity. When we say granularity, it may have spelling mistakes. It may have different kind of data formats. It can also have different way of structuring the data, so that can be handled easily. So these kind of data engineering, data quality is not an issue now, which we
Okay.
used to handle it before this LLM phases, right?
Uh-huh.
Because we used to correct the data formats, date formats, spellings and everything, and then we used to train or use our models. So this you may ignore as of now. I would say you should be, but you may ignore this kind of issues now. But what you need to definitely have as a good data means is it should be validated by your domain experts. It should say the right thing, because whatever your data says will be
Mhm.
used by LLM to infer your answers. It should not have any older information contradicting with the newer information, right? So for example, let's say my company has a product pricing and that
Mhm.
has been defined on a different levels or licensing levels in a document. I'm giving it to LLM to chat to my customers to give them the proposal or whatever, right? Now this pricing has changed recently this month. Now if these two documents are going to LLM, which pricing should LLM suggest, right? So these kind of data quality or data issues we should definitely handle. So when we say data is important, 100% data quality is also important, but the
Mhm.
way we are using the data before and now has changed, and accordingly we should make our information on the data and validation
Mhm.
on the data has to be done. And this is what I'm saying is training plus inference. Now there's another layer that we have added, which we used to less reliable before, is to read your output. You need to
Okay.
validate your output as well, right?
Okay. But one thing I would like to, double click is you said that right now, even if the data is bad, you handle most of it at the LM layer. But don't you think that also has a risk of first thing is bad data getting through the model. Second thing is it increases the workload of, let's say, data cleansing or data profiling, putting the data quality rules, which should have been done in a data engineering pipeline rather than at the end where you want to put that into a training model, right? Because let's say, for example, if there is the data is in okay, ELT model may be okay, but if you want to go for ETL model where you want to take it up from warehouse, then you expect that in the warehouse the golden copies or the golden record is already there, right? But so I would still prefer a clean data any day. But again, so you were just saying that even if that is not there, we are
See,
capable of
my
filtering.
so I'm so that's what I'm trying to say. Like, so I'm not trying to say like we should just put in bad data as well, because LLM will handle it. We should try to get the cleaner data. If the some of the data cleansing issue, for example, let's say spellings are not correct at some places, it should not fail the pipeline and should handle at the LLM level. Right? So basically, from training time to run time is the difference, right? So previously we used to focus a lot on training time, data quality. So now it has moved to run time as well, right? So whatever data that we are providing to the LLMs at the runtime while generating our output as a part of the context or everything, that should also be very, very clear, correct, and what we say, validated.
Right, right. What about biasness in the data? Any suggestions on how we can reduce biasness?
Yeah, I think so. That's the reason we wanted to rely on these answers to some extent and validate, because definitely there could be biases, right? And biases could be on different levels. One is by the data itself, right?
Correct.
Training the model, data could be biased, right? So let's say if we are training our own model, we can handle it to some sense, we can check the bias and we can correct it. So that is one level. Now the another layer that I said, we are using, or we are taking help from humans to give feedback to these models. So those humans may also have kind of a bias. So we need to be very, very careful about that bias as well. Now let's say we have corrected these two biases. While generating the output also, the context that we providing could also have biases. And then even at the final level, when we get the output, the human who's reading it may also have a bias. So bias, I believe, would be always a part of any of the AI systems that we have. We need to see how we can handle it, how we eliminate to some extent. So this is what I believe, like, so there would be bias to some extent, right? But we need to understand, okay, how much the bias is, how much we can tolerate, and then whenever we are using it, we are keeping that bias in our mind or not. So for example, like I said, the same, let's take the same mutual fund examples, right? So there could be two different mindsets of the human who have trained these models. One could be non-risk takers, one could be risk takers, right? So my output could be very risk heavy.
Right.
So I make sure I put my risk levels on the prompt whenever I'm getting the output, so that it can handle some of the bias. And then whenever I'm reading this output and validate it separately as well, that it is more risky or not. So it's a very small example of understanding the bias. So like you said, we should be aware about the artificialness of the models. We should also be aware about the biasness, the hallucination part that these models may have.
Interesting. In that thought, in the real scenario, because you are always engaged in this kind of work, how much of the data is now real data and how much of this synthetic or augmented data that we use for training?
I think that's a very big question.
No, in your experience,
So
I know.
so when I see all the social media, I believe this is all synthetic data. But what I believe, the data could be very synthetic, or written in a more synthetic way, or to take a help from AI. What I believe is very important is the thought, the ideas that we are having right now. So again, coming back to your question, yeah, data could be very, very synthetic, but in the enterprise space, let's say in a personal space, let's say we go to LinkedIn, we go to different social media, I see a lot of synthetic data, post generated from AI. People may have automated that completely.
Correct.
All these things are being happening there. A lot of for my post also, I write it on my own, then I use GPT to refine it as a text, like I said. So it looks synthetic also eventually, right? It's not a proper human language, right? But that's okay. My idea is my original, so that's why I posted. But this kind of data which is synthetic is fine. But if you go to the enterprise level, I believe the data is still very, very real, because maybe we have not reached to a level where we have a lot of synthetic data also pulling into the pipeline. But this is always a thought that I should discuss with my friends and colleagues, that right now the models are training on the human data. Let's say 10 years down the line, if we are still training LLMs, then we are training on LLMs data itself, because there is no
Correct.
generated data or even refined by LLMs. So
Correct.
I think that's where we will have a different problem to solve. But right now, to answer your question in short, in the enterprise space, I feel the data is still very real, not very synthetic. We simulate the data that we used to do before also. That has not changed a lot for our testing, for our evaluations. But when we are taking the decisions or giving the output to, let's say, end customers, the data is pretty real that we are packed up from. The layering of that to to frame the answer could be a little bit from LLMs, but
Mhm.
the facts and the data is real, very real. In my experience, it could be different for different people as well. But for me, I feel so. Let's say let's take example of a different domain. So I'm talking about as a data scientist, right? So for example, for graphic designers, right? So a lot of images I'm seeing could be already LLM generated, and that is what it's using as a reference to generate a new image. So that's where it could be more synthetic. But as far as I feel, the tools that we are being used and being created or maybe given as a license have a more of a real data. But down the line, let's say 5 years from now, I think I'm not sure how much real data will be there to train these models.
Correct. So that's where I was coming to. Like at some point, I think that people will be paying for proprietary data,
Yes.
right? Yes, because just like how we pay for services, goods and services, people will be actually selling their, yes, now also they're selling, but again, it'll be more and more, I think, more and more expensive at some point of time to have the real data, right? Rather than the mock-up data that we get from LLMs, right?
Right.
While we are at the data, discussing about data, I would like to really discuss on one thing, which is the data lifecycle, right? From you have seen the whole, I mean, as a data scientist, as a data engineer, you have been this side of the spectrum also, and you have been this side of the spectrum also,
Right.
right? The whole spectrum you have seen from end to end as a data engineer and a data scientist. Now, as we were discussing before the podcast also, right? The delivery of this model has drastically changed
Right.
from data discovery to making a colon copy, colon record ready for consumption by downstream systems. It has completely changed. Where exactly do you think AI has really helped in this data lifecycle?
I think it has changed a lot in terms of having understanding of the data as well.
Hmm. You mean the profiling and all?
Profiling the data, having the context of the data, cleansing of the data, which was used to be a very huge task. I remember when I used to work on Informatica, there was always a job which is just correcting the dates, types,
Correct.
formatting it, right? So there would be a job of the date dimension which is correcting everything.
Hmm.
So that itself used to take a lot of time because the dates are not always consistent. In this world, kind of smaller issues might not have a lot of uh, bigger impact, but again I believe the the clean data, like 80% of AI is still data. So having the clean data, clear pipeline, what we have added on this is, so we are only talking about the data point correction, but now we need to also validate the data with clear ownership. So when I say ownership, it means that okay, there should be a domain or a context expert who
Hmm.
says this data looks correct.
Correct.
So previously we used to do it in a very simpler manner. We used to generate reports and let them review it. But now we need to bring those guys from reporting layer to the data pipeline layer
Hmm.
and say this data looks correct because the reporting layer is being done by LLMs automatically. So this pipeline are still required, needs to be cleaned up. Maybe if we miss out some of the granularity, that is okay, that can be handled, but it has to be very, very clean in terms of context, domain expertise. There should be a SME who can validate this data.
Hmm.
That is one change that I feel I've seen happening. Now, previously there used to be majorly the structured data, right, that we used to use. There would be a very less unstructured data. Now it is almost balanced, right? We have structured data
I would
with the
say it's more.
unstructured
It,
data.
it, it yeah, yeah, I would say it's more.
I would not say more because eventually when you talk to about the facts, you go to structured data yet.
Yeah, no, yeah, correct. If you look at the end of it, it's all we change it to structured data.
Yes.
But if you look, like for example, the start of the web, right? So
Correct,
everything
correct.
was before everything was like okay, it's a data, Oracle data, database, SQL database. Then once you have the web, right, the social media again, amount of unstructured data has drastically increased, and probably that's why the concept of
So when
data.
I say the 50-50 right now it's happening, it could increase more. When I say 50-50 is because when you say unstructured data, the level of ownership on the unstructured data is very less right now.
Hmm.
Right. So for example, like I gave you just one example, right? So there could be two pages giving the license and the product and the pricing informations. So
Hmm.
there should be a owner who say, okay, I will maintain this as my latest page and then provide it as a data pipe, right? So I think that's where the unstructured data ownership is still, I feel, is lesser.
You mean the governance of it?
Governance, validation, and like you said, like, so yeah, ownership in covering everything, governance as well. And what has it has improved is, previously we used to have a lot of data in silos. Let's say some good great document is just present over some of the emails, and
Correct.
that could be a very good back as a data point, right? So for example, we have a lot of financial, yeah, I think some issue with the cam. I just changed the cam. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. We can probably start from, maybe we can start from the which one? Silo part.
Yeah, it started celebrate. I think
Issue
it's
with
ये webcam चला गया for some reason.
Within चला गया.
पता नहीं, it's not working. So I moved to my laptop camera.
ठीक है ठीक है.
Okay, I start with the silo point. So right now what we are seeing is a lot of data is in silos. So for example, there could be a very good PDF which has a lot of good information, factual information, validated by SMEs, a good historical context as well, which were not in use before. We were just giving the charts and everything. Now if we combine those PDF with these charts, it gives you a very good inference and also give you the action point directly. Like based on this point, what we have done in the historical phase, now this is what you can do, which is validated and correct, right? So this is what is changing in terms of the whole life cycle of the data. So this kind of data is coming in, but with a responsibility that we need to be sure of this data. We need to have a good governance, and we should be there should be an owner of this data, right? So previously we just say, okay, these are just data pipelines. Now these maybe we can say it as contextual or context pipelines. So containing the structured data, unstructured data, combination of these two, validated, governed, and say this is all good. So then only if we put it to any of these models, then we will definitely have a good quality output.
Interesting. I believe that yes, the changes in what the data engineering has taken place in the past so many years with the coming of, let's say, Snowflake or Databricks, these products in the market, they're coming up with lot of innovation, right, in terms of data engineering and infused with AI, right? I believe that, like you said, the contextual pipeline is what we are moving into from only a specific data pipeline, right? And also one other thing that you said, correctly said, is about the data lying in silos, right? So where we don't know whether the data is there, right? So right now, what good thing is happen is we are able to provide all sources, and then all the data sources. There will be SharePoint, there will be even a Microsoft ecosystem, right? Like SharePoint, services, Teams, anyone. We are able to scrap it throughout and find all the data, right? So I think that's one thing we are able to get an advantage of. Now, a bit into what we were discussing on the now raw data to intelligence, right? The data life cycle. When these raw data are ingested, file clean, then they are ready for feeding the models. Still, I believe, like we discussed about hallucination, right? In the enterprise systems, when we want to use the models, we use a very important thing, a rack, right? Uh, do you want to give context on how important is RAG still today
Yeah, I think we
and
have
how
a
is
lot of
relevant
models
to
who are
nowadays?
able to take a long context, but I believe so. I think it can handle a lot of RAG kind of scenarios, but this is again my personal experience. So RAG is not just giving a long context. So RAG is basically combining multiple data sources and making a combined or comprehensive context, right? So if you remember, in our older days we used to have multiple sources of data, then we used to create a data pipeline or a job to combine all this data together and have master tables or something like that, right? So
Okay.
I think that is what basically RAG is, with
Right,
different
correct.
models of modality of the data. So when we say model can take a longer context, it's good, but to choose from the right context and the right source is something that RAG provides us that flexibility, right? So whenever you have multiple kinds of data, like we can just take the same example, like we have textual data in some PDF, different places, we can combine those. We can combine even the structured data, we can combine even images, previous videos, some talk being taken by some leadership, any kind of meeting inputs, all these audio video kind of outputs, Then we can combine together, put it as our backend of RAG, and then whenever user asks a question, we can choose from this large pool of data which we can use, and then get the more comprehensive and quality answers. So long context models works out when your context itself is not very long all the time, right? So for example, I'm giving a very simple example. For example, I am making a bot or something which can answer or find me a good candidate from pool of let's say 100 people who have applied for the job. So my overall context will not go beyond 100 resumes. So then the long context model can work out very well. But in case we have, like I said, it could be enterprise level when we are talking about multiple types of resources, of modality of the data, different sources of the data, and pipelines of the data. That's where I believe RAG would be more useful still, because even if you have a longer context, you can't provide everything every time. So this is what I feel as a limitation of the long context. It works out very well,
Okay.
let's say in case of coding example, right? So for example, I'm using these long context model for my coding, so it can take the whole repo together. So here the my whole context is my whole repo. So it's good that my model can take this whole context all the time. So my always the new code generated or the code I'm correcting is in the context of the whole repo. So it is always more comprehensive and focused on the task that I wanted to get, right? In this place is also to be more useful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. While we're discussing about, yeah, again, here in LLM, I'll touch this part a little bit and then we'll move on to the next part. Has feature engineering become less relevant or has it changed now? What do you think in your day-to-day data science as a data scientist, right? In your organization or previous organization, is it still relevant
Yeah,
or
I
like
think we
how it
have
has
touched
changed over
upon
time?
this in our last few answers. So, feature engineering is still important, but as a bigger scope of the data that we have, right? So, previously we used to have specific features which tells about something. So, for example, we used to have a particular feature, then we derive 4 or 5 features from that as our input to the model, so that our model has better context and will run. So maybe that we can replace with different kind of prompts, different kind of expertise of the prompts, or maybe there's a
Mm.
possibility that
Mm.
we can make mixture of experts kind of a prompt can replace this kind of a scenario. Previously, we used to have only
Okay.
majorly tables as a data. Now we have multiple types of the data, free text,
Mm-hmm.
images, videos, audios. So the feature engineering has changed from there to
Sure.
here. So we need to handle these kind of data as well more, right? Now in terms of pipeline, also it has become more complex and comprehensive, because now we need to combine all this data together and make sure that the governance is there, to make sure this data is contextually correct, domain wise correct, factually correct, and then these
Sure.
data should be efficient enough for these LLMs to also use. So I give you one example. There was one time, it's a long back now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have a better ways to do this. We had all the data in Excel formats. The kind of LLM and the system that we built was not very accurate to extract the data from those Excel or those tables. So what we did is we just converted those Excel into markdowns
Mm-hmm.
with some context using LLM, so that we have now
Okay.
markdown. So this markdown is more easily ingestible to LLMs than a table, right? So these kind of things have come up now, which was
Uh-huh.
not very common previously. So again, coming from my experience, that's what I'm saying. So these kind of things have changed for feature
Okay.
engineering, right? Now the in the long term,
Uh,
the system will be just driven based on your prompts, right? So you have a kind of a orchestrator prompt
mm-hmm.
decide which data it has to go, right? So we need to be very cautious about defining those rules, defining those boundaries. Now we have agents, right? So agents are doing everything. Feature engineering also includes defining the boundaries and the scope of that data. So it's not just the data, it's also putting a metadata also very important to these data, right? So for example, we have an image. The metadata is also very important for that image whenever we are ingesting these LLMs, because these agents are relying on those metadata a
Yeah.
lot, right? So this is how I believe it has changed a lot.
Correct.
So maybe if I say in just one liner, like we have not eliminated feature engineering for sure, We have changed it. We have gone more comprehensive, and the layering of the feature engineering has changed to prompts, retrieval systems, multiple modality of the data, and the scope of the data. And the very important is the metadata also.
I think that answers my question about the feature engineering. Thank you so much for going in depth with that one. I loved it. Going towards again now more into the modern AI systems and all the hype that's been going about the agentic framework and the agentic AI systems. People, there is this famous meme on LinkedIn, people talking about AI and people really doing AI, right? People, it's like 90% is what people talking about AI, and
Okay.
actually working on proper AI stuff is 10%, right? So it's hype versus reality. Still, I think it's with the LLM models coming out, people might not know there are also small language models right there rather than LLMs, right? And there are also different models which are working for different, not only LLMs but other, AI models which are working for different kind of industries, different kind of use cases. Right now, I believe that with LLMs, what we are doing is just the tip of the icebergs that, what people are really excited about, right? Like, for example, with coming off Anthropic's Claude, yes, you are able to make sure that you're giving access to all the emails, and then it's having a kind of a nice expert assistant who does all your things. Like previously, you used to have a PA, a secretary who schedules your work, who makes sure you send out the email, who reminds you, okay, this is happening, this has happening, who give you some context, right? Like that. But that is what the normal users do, right? And I believe uh, even today's AI tools, people should be, I think, growing more than what the hype is and really going deep into the agentic framework where it's changing the landscape of the labor workforce, right? For example, one of the podcasts that I did, I was speaking to the guest and he was explaining how he replaced his whole recruitment team with an agentic AI system, right? So starting from planning, so he broke down the whole thing, and I was amazed. I mean, he was like, "You guys see, there's a 6 months plan for hiring a team of people, around 3, 4 people, and it needs from the procurement. Like for example, you start looking into the requirement, then you start finding out who are the required people by, let's say, advertising the job information on LinkedIn and other pages. And then you receive the resumes. You go through the resume, understand who are the rightful people for the interview, schedule an interview for them with the right people, interviewers, make the first round, second round, third round, all those things, get them onboarded, do the onboarding for them also, and give the right access to the tools and everything for them. And this all done by the planning, right? Planning the whole like a project,
Yeah.
and all the agentic systems are working to each other to do this thing, right? Around, let's say, in the background, 100 agents are working, right? And they does a better job. I mean, they do a better job than the recruitment team he had. People are at that level, like that level. People are also doing advances, and in this kind of implementations, and also saving cost, right? Then others are one side of the spectrum where people are fascinated with creating videos on TikTok and then reels and all with AI. So different spectrum, right? I think both depends on
Right.
on what kind of use cases are they. But in the enterprise environment, right, in real world, where it matters, right? Yes, these are also things that matter, but in a large scale, right? What impact do you think, and in your experience, the advent of AI, modern AI systems with the agentic framework has come into play with?
Yeah, I think I
What
agree
changes you have seen
with the
largely?
division, and to be honest, being more like a fan of agentic frameworks, and I use agents myself, building some of the agents in the past as well. What I believe is, like you said, so, and if you remember, we were talking about the risk levels in the first phase of this, right? So I think that's what we need to bring out here again, right?
Correct.
So it
Correct.
depends on your risk
Correct.
levels or the complexity of the
Yeah.
problem, right? So is it a hype? I would say no. It is actually work, but it depends on the complexity of the task. It depends on the level of risk you are able to take, right? So for example, I have built a agent to do a proper research from multiple places and then maybe refine my resume and then post and apply on the LinkedIn and those kind of things I have done, right? Similarly, if you just flip side of this agent, if a system is something that you refine, actually recruiting people through this, and then how sure are you on the recruitment that has been done, right? So that will have a better, more impact if I do it wrong than if I make some wrong applications from my side.
Correct.
So let's say my profile is principal or maybe a data scientist or AI scientist, let's say. Even if it applies as a front-end engineer, that is not an impactful thing for me, right? So that is one side of thinking of this as a personal use cases
Correct.
or even smaller enterprise use cases. But if we go to a deeper use cases, we have coding agents these days. We have a lot of enterprise tools like Microsoft has
Correct.
Copilot. Even my company has released Rovo. Right? These products are pretty strong,
Correct.
but they are getting
Correct.
better with the context and when we define a particular areas of expertise. So can they solve all the problem? Maybe not. But if you say, okay, can they solve this 10% set of your problems? Yes, they can do that. So eventually we are growing into that, right? So I would not say it's a hype. I would say it's in growing stage, and once we be more
Mhm.
mature on these agents, they will work
Mhm.
out better as well, right? For these coding agents,
Mhm.
I was using Cursor and some other even VS Code agent to do the coding, right? The way it codes, it would be much better than a lot of
Correct.
coders that we have in our
Mhm.
industry, right? But would it work all the time? Would it be a level
Mhm.
that we can just directly or blindly put it into production? Maybe not. So it is mature enough to do the right coding structure or code, understand your
Mhm.
problem, and maybe make the code in a way a good software engineer would do. But you need to be so it is not mature enough to do this to a level that it can blindly be done as a production. Right. So it is in the middle of hype and reality. This is
Mhm.
what I would try to place it. So it is not a hype. It is happening. I have seen enterprise tools being part of that team as well. So they are working. But if you say we
Okay.
have the scope like of 100 kinds of problem, right now it is not solving all the 100 kinds of problem. It may be solving 30 kinds of problem, right? Exactly. For
Mhm.
70, it may work, for some time, it may not work.
Okay.
But that is where the work is going on. That is where we all are
Mhm.
working towards, and that is where we will go in few years, right? But in some scenarios, when I'm seeing also like a lot of people saying, okay, we have replaced the whole team with AI. I have not been, I mean,
Mhm.
connected with such people who have done this completely. So I don't have a lot of perspective on the reality of it. So I don't give you the answer that I don't have for. What
Right.
I believe from outside, it is hard to do completely automate through AI without keeping any human in the loop. If the risk level is more than medium, that's how I see it. If the risk level is below medium, I am okay to
Correct.
do it.
Correct. Correct.
Do it later.
Yeah.
But the answer is, if it is more than medium or even medium, then I'll be keeping some human in the loop and then maybe work with it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair answer, and I would love to
Yes.
see in the future how this turns out to be. So it's exciting time though, because there is like we're discussing, there's a different spectrum where AI is used and discussed about how to make videos, how to because all the discussion that I see is
Correct.
all about productivity.
Right.
How to increase your productivity, how to do it in minutes. Again, as we're almost coming to closer, I would love to leave our audience with some thoughts. We were discussing more now about models, ecosystem, and at this point, I believe you talk about an AI, AI first systems, AI first organizations, or let's say organizations wants to make their AI story successful, right? I believe that apart from let's say model and data, the support system they have, right? The pipelines, like you said, more into the contextual pipeline has moved out. Then how even they use the advanced tools, which will make sure that, I would say the system is more advantageous. Like, for example, like you said about contextual understanding, the integration.
Right.
Also, there's a need of human in the loop, right, to make sure that the context is set properly, there's no errors, right? So I think it's a
Right.
huge symphony, right? It's not just one guy playing a rock song in guitar, and then it's a symphony, right? Everyone is trying to play
Right.
their part and with the right note, right? One note goes here, and then the whole symphony goes out of order, right? So it's a closing thought. What are the things that you look forward to? Also, what are the things that audience should be excited about in the coming future? And try out, right? And one thing or one or two things that people
Yeah, I
should
think
avoid.
as an excitement, I believe the kind of advancement that we are seeing and the speed of the advancement that I am seeing across the industry, like everybody is seeing that with like within just 3 years, how much we have matured on LLMs, we have even the efficiency in terms of cost, and the quality of the output has changed like anything. So we should be excited about these advancement. Also, the way it is able to handle multiple models of the data, right? Not just the text, it is handling the images like anything, right? I was generating a lot of images through Gemini. I'm seeing like how mature it
Right.
is. Initially, it was always doing the spelling mistakes. Now it doesn't do. So the way it is doing it is very, very exciting. So we
Right,
should
right,
all try
correct,
all these
correct.
new tools. But when I'm working on a particular project from the data science perspective or any perspective, don't overuse these technology in your work. For example, if you can just make a simple prediction model using, let's say, a classification model, don't just put LLMs under it. Not, it may not give you a lot of output just using a advanced
Mhm.
technology. We should try it out maybe, but don't enforce it without doing. So this is something that I be very, very conscious
Right.
about. Another thing that we should be also keeping in our mind, the whole landscape of the industry is changing in terms of how we build the software, how softwares are looked at. Like previously, software was basically rule based mostly. Now they are intelligent on their own, right? So
Mhm.
we are moving towards a software that can think and take their own decisions instead of we are writing a lot of if else, right. So that is what excites also, but we need to be very, very
Uh-huh.
cautious about building or understanding those kind of products, right? Another thing is what will matter, I believe, is to not just the model. So model is just one part of it. Like you said, we have like a combination of everything. Like you very well placed it like a symphony, right? We have model, we have context, we have governance, we have expertise, and the system around it that you are building is very, very important, right? So even people who are into data
Mhm.
science should think about system
Mhm.
designing as well. People who are in software engineering should think about how to make your
Correct.
product code or whatever is more intelligent. So I think this is what I believe is changing. Is basically
Absolutely.
the product is not just the model or the context. It is the system that we are building, mining everything together, and making sure it is well being layered by governance, validations, and everything. So this is what I believe we should be thinking about.
Yeah, I believe those were really good thoughts on. I mean, good closing thoughts on this topic. When you said about the Gemini, what I remember is I used to give a prompt at the end that
Correct, correct.
don't
We all have done
do
that. We all
spelling
have done
mistakes. So yeah, yeah. So I remember giving that. Now it doesn't do. Now it has improved a lot. The model has improved a lot. But previously it was hectic. And also we remember that the image when it's big, it used to stretch and it used to have cuts. At wrong places, right? It was cropped. So we had to really say, don't crop, choose this size, then don't do spelling mistakes. I used to even
that. Right.
write, do not hallucinate. So yeah, I mean, we've come a long way, even in, 3 years' time. I believe the advancement that we have in the AI area, we have come a long way. Last but not the least, I also ask this question on it seems to me, or I think to many, tech enthusiasts that in India, even if this question was asked a lot of in the government platforms and even a lot of conferences, we seem to be, great end users, how we do things with the applications. And right now, a lot of companies are coming, a lot of startups are coming up in India, even in the AI summit this time. We got to see a lot of good stuff there. But still, if you go compare to China, right? If you compare to the Silicon Valley, right? We are way behind. So for our, I would say for young audience, like those who are now coming out with graduates, coming, going into graduation
Right.
for engineering or any tech enthusiast, right, in this area. What advice would you love to leave um, to make them, motivated and also, also enthusiastic about and excited about creating tools and this, working on models rather than, yes, that is also needed, being an expert in the and being an end user, but again, creating more models and tools which can
Yeah.
be beneficial
So
for
I think
masses.
I think to increase the scope of our answer, I think this is not just applicable to any new person coming into or getting into graduation. I think we all in the same phase. So how I take this question as like basically
Mm.
what we should be keep doing to go beyond being the end user of this, and it is applicable to I believe everybody, not just who's a student of let's say BTech third year or 1 year. I think it is applicable for all of us to keep learning and keep looking for the areas that we can build upon. And India is so again this is my like very personal thought that in general India is becoming now more risk takers. Like we are bringing more risk takers now. So that's the reason we are having a lot of starters.
Mm.
Me myself is not a very big risk taker. That's the reason we are not at the stage that we can take a bigger risk and go into a grind of building out these things. But it has changed from last let's
Mm.
say 10 years, and we are going towards that. And a lot of companies are building their own models, and we are also going towards like more of a sovereign AI in India itself. I can see Dubai is already or UAE is already doing it. Other countries are
Correct.
also
Correct.
doing it, and we are also going towards that. So we will be soon
Yes.
we'll be competing with all these different levels that we are having. But as us, what we should first of all be exposed to all the tools, because I see a lot of people still around me, even in the junior space or a senior space, are not these tools. First of all, you have to be a very good user also, and then once you start
Mhm.
using you, then you find okay, this is not working out well. Maybe this is the area that I should think about, and then start building on
Mhm.
that. So a lot of people just stop there itself. So that is more like a user
Mhm.
to developer kind of a perspective. If you are starting from scratch, then
Mhm.
still a lot of basics are very important. All right, think about learning all the statistical concepts. You should also think about learning all the mathematics, machine learning concepts, whatever we are building, all this, the back end of these models. Learning this is very important,
Right. Correct.
because that is where you can bring out a lot of improvement, right? So what has been built, you can rebuild that definitely for India data. But
Innovation. Right.
the major value that we can bring
Right.
it out, like to understand that and see, okay, this is something that we can improve, then make own something of that. So this is what I personally think. It may not be a something which everyone follows, but if I get a chance to go back to college and say, okay, you have full 15 years again to get back, and you're a student now for 3 4 years, this is what I will do. I will go back and learn more deeper into statistics,
Sure.
mathematics, understand each and every equation and line of these LLMs, and then maybe build my own LLM which is better, faster, maybe a better output of something of that sort, right? So yeah, so that is what I can say about this.
Anyway, thank you so much, Nitin, for your thoughts and in today's podcast. It was really exciting and insights, a lot of learnings. I believe our audience, have enjoyed our session, and big thank you. That's all I can say. And for all those who are watching the podcast, thank you all for staying till here. Stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so that you are informed on the videos when it
Thank
comes
you.
in.
Thanks, Yogesh, for
Thank you all.
inviting.
Have a good
Take
day.
care,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.